After 8 years of agonizing uncertainty, Ethan and Claire Coulter discovered their missing son Joshua imprisoned in a hidden bunker beneath their neighbor's dog kennel. A horrifying revelation that shattered the quiet facade of their small Minnesota town. Joshua was deeply traumatized after spending his entire childhood in captivity, but his parents were determined to help him heal and rebuild a future. Yet even with his kidnapper behind bars, their nightmare wasn't over. The family would be separated, and their hopes shattered once again in unexpected ways no one could have seen coming. Before we dive into part 2 of this shocking story, let us know where you're watching from today. And if you like this video, don't forget to subscribe. The courtroom fell silent as Judge Harriet Brennan delivered her final verdict, the weight of her words hanging in the air like a physical presence. Harold Stevens, for the crimes of kidnapping, false imprisonment, child endangerment, and assault with a deadly weapon, I hereby sentence you to 25 years in a federal correctional facility without the possibility of parole. The gavel struck with finality, its sharp crack echoing through the hushed chamber. At 55 years old, Harold would likely spend the remainder of his life behind bars. Ethan Coulter felt Claire's hand tighten around his own as they sat in the front row of the gallery. Beside them, their son Joshua, now 13 years old, stared straight ahead, his expression unreadable. The boy had insisted on attending the sentencing, despite his therapist's concerns about potential trauma triggers. "It's over now," Claire whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. But was it? 8 months had passed since that snowy night when Ethan had discovered the hidden bunker beneath Harold's dog kennel. 8 months of therapy sessions, police interviews, and court appearances. 8 months of trying to rebuild what had been shattered 8 years ago. As bailiffs led Harold away in handcuffs, the convicted man turned briefly, his gaze sweeping across the courtroom until it landed on Joshua. For a fleeting moment, something passed between them, a final wordless exchange that made Ethan's skin crawl. Then Harold was gone, disappearing through the side door that led to the courthouse holding cells. Ethan placed his arm around Joshua's shoulders. "He can't hurt you anymore," he said gently. "You're safe now." Joshua nodded, though the tension in his small frame didn't subside. "Tomorrow we'll be in our new home," Ethan continued, trying to inject optimism into his voice. "Today we'll finish packing, and the movers will pick everything up in the morning. A fresh start for all of us." As they made their way out of the courtroom, a tall, broad-shouldered man approached them in the corridor. Ethan recognized him immediately as Roderick Thompson, owner of Northwoods Kennels, the local dog breeder where Harold had purchased the German Shepherd that was meant to guard Joshua's prison. "Mr. and Mrs. Coulter," Roderick greeted them, his smile revealing a row of perfectly straight teeth. He extended his hand to Ethan. "I just wanted to congratulate you on the verdict. 25 years. Seems the judge's decision pleased everyone in the community." Ethan shook his hand, noting the firmness of Roderick's grip. "Thank you. After all this ugliness, maybe our little neighborhood can get back to being the peaceful place it was known for," Roderick continued. "Maple Hollow has always been such a tight-knit, safe community. At least, that's what I always thought before. Well, before all this." "We appreciate your testimony during the trial," Claire said politely. "The way you described Harold's unusual behavior when purchasing the dog helped establish his state of mind." Roderick waved a dismissive hand. "Just doing my civic duty. That man needed to be put away, and I'm glad I could help make that happen." He paused, glancing around before lowering his voice slightly. "I noticed the 'For Sale' sign outside your property. Are you folks really leaving Maple Hollow?" Ethan nodded. "We've already purchased a house in Lakeview. It's not too far, about 40 miles east, but far enough to give us some distance. Joshua needs it. We all do." "I certainly understand that," Roderick said, his expression sympathetic. "When are you planning to move?" "Tomorrow morning," Claire answered. "The movers are scheduled to arrive at 8. Roderick's eyebrows lifted in surprise. "So soon?" "You know, if I'd known you were moving this quickly, I could have offered my services. I recently expanded my business ventures. In addition to the dog breeding operation, I've started a moving company. Makes sense, really. I already have the trucks and logistics connections from transporting dogs to shows and clients." Ethan blinked, taken aback by the sudden business pitch. "That's enterprising of you." "I'd be happy to handle your move," Roderick continued eagerly. "As a gesture of goodwill and friendship, I'd do it free of charge. Consider it my contribution to helping your family move forward." "That's very generous," Claire said, "but we've already hired Lakeview movers. We've paid the deposit and everything is arranged." Roderick leaned in conspiratorially. "You can always cancel with them. Even with a cancellation fee, my offer would save you thousands. I know how much this trial and all the legal fees must have strained your finances." Ethan and Claire exchanged glances. It was true. The past 8 months had been financially devastating. Between therapy costs not fully covered by insurance, legal consultations, and lost income from taking time off work, their savings had dwindled alarmingly. "We'll consider it," Ethan said carefully. "Thank you for the offer." "Excellent," Roderick beamed. "If you decide to accept, just stop by the kennel office today. The sooner the better, so I can arrange the logistics for tomorrow morning." He handed Ethan a business card. "This could save you a significant amount of money." As Roderick turned to leave, Joshua suddenly clutched at Ethan's shirt sleeve. "Dad," he whispered urgently, pointing toward a woman walking briskly toward the courthouse exit. "That's Mira." Ethan looked up, but the woman had already pushed through the glass doors and was disappearing down the courthouse steps. "Who?" he asked, turning back to his son. Joshua's face had gone pale. "Mira. I saw her with Harold before." Claire knelt beside him, concern etched across her features. "Honey, are you sure? You've never mentioned anyone named Mira before?" "I only saw her once," Joshua insisted, his eyes still fixed on the doors where the woman had vanished. "But I remember her face." Before they could follow, their lawyer approached with a stack of documents requiring signatures to formalize the conclusion of the criminal proceedings. By the time they finished and made their way to the parking lot, there was no sign of the mysterious woman. As they drove home, Claire turned in her seat to face Joshua in the back. "You're safe now, sweetie," she assured him. "No one can harm you anymore. Anyone who might have bad intentions would think twice after seeing how severe the punishment was for Harold." "That's right," Ethan agreed, glancing at his son in the rearview mirror. "As long as we stick together, we'll be safe. And once we're in our new home, we can truly start fresh." Joshua stared out the window, watching the familiar streets of Maple Hollow slip past. "Can we move even further away?" he asked quietly. "Like to a different state?" Ethan sighed, feeling the familiar weight of guilt and inadequacy press down on him. "I'm sorry, buddy. My job at the engineering firm still requires me to be based in northern Minnesota, but Lakeview is a bigger town with better security systems in the new house. No one there knows our story." Unless they watched the news, he thought grimly, but kept that to himself. As they turned onto their street, the first flutters of snow began to fall from the gray February sky, a gentle reminder that winter wasn't quite ready to release its grip on Maple Hollow. As they approached their house, Ethan was surprised to see a cluster of people gathered on their front lawn, holding colorful balloons and a large banner that read, "Congratulations, Coulter family. Justice prevailed." "What's all this?" Claire murmured, a smile spreading across her face. Ethan pulled into the driveway and turned off the engine. As they stepped out of the car, their neighbors burst into applause. Martha Jenkins, who lived 2 doors down, rushed forward to embrace Claire. "We wanted to celebrate with you," she explained, her eyes brimming with tears. "The whole neighborhood has been following the trial, and we're all so relieved that Monster will be locked away for good." More neighbors came forward, offering hugs, handshakes, and words of support. Someone had set up a table with cookies and punch on the front lawn, and children whom Joshua had once played with, now 8 years older, hovered awkwardly nearby, unsure how to interact with the boy they barely recognized. Ethan watched as Joshua shrank away from the attention, edging closer to the house. Despite months of therapy, large gatherings still overwhelmed him, a lasting effect of his years in isolation. "Thank you all so much," Ethan addressed the crowd, genuine gratitude in his voice. "Your support means everything to us, but as you know, we're moving tomorrow and we still have quite a bit of packing to do." Several neighbors immediately volunteered to help, but Ethan politely declined, explaining that they had a system in place and were nearly finished. The gathering gradually shifted into a more relaxed social event, with neighbors reminiscing about happier times in the community and expressing their hopes for the Coulters' future. Claire moved from group to group, thanking everyone individually for their kindness. Ethan tried to keep an eye on Joshua while also participating in conversations, but after about 10 minutes, he realized he hadn't seen his son for several minutes. "Claire," he called out, interrupting her conversation with Mrs. Potter from across the street. "Have you seen Joshua?" Claire's expression immediately shifted from pleasant sociality to maternal concern. "He was just here a moment ago." She scanned the gathering frantically. Joshua! Joshua! A cold dread settled in Ethan's stomach as he broke away from the group circling the house. "Joshua!" he called, his voice growing more urgent. Then he spotted him, a small figure standing in the backyard of Harold's house across the street, the yellow police tape still cordoning off the property, fluttering in the breeze around him. "Joshua!" Ethan called, jogging across the street and ducking under the police tape. "What are you doing? You can't be here." Joshua stood near the infamous dog kennel, staring at it with an unsettling intensity. When he turned to face his father, his expression was eerily calm. "I need to get some guns from the bunker," he said matter-of-factly. "I don't feel safe." The statement hit Ethan like a physical blow. He knelt beside his son, placing his hands gently on the boy's shoulders. "Joshua, listen to me. There are no guns down there anymore. The police cleared everything out months ago." He pulled his son into a protective embrace. "I understand why you're feeling unsafe. All those people, the excitement, it must be overwhelming." Joshua leaned into his father's embrace, his small body trembling slightly. I don't like it when there are too many friends watching me. And that woman, Mira, from the courthouse." "I know, buddy," Ethan said softly. "Look, your mom is already sending everyone home." He gestured across the street where Claire was indeed politely but firmly thanking the neighbors and suggesting they wrap up the gathering. "Why don't we head back? We can have a quiet evening, just the three of us." Joshua nodded, and they began walking back toward the street. As they passed the yellow police tape again, a sleek black sedan pulled up in front of Harold's house. The driver's door opened, and a woman stepped out, early 30s, with shoulder-length dark hair and designer sunglasses despite the overcast day. Joshua's hand suddenly clamped down on Ethan's with surprising strength. Ethan glanced down to see his son's face had drained of color. The woman approached them with a confident stride. "Excuse me," she called, removing her sunglasses to reveal striking hazel eyes. "I'm looking for Harold Stevens's residence. Is this it?" Before Ethan could respond, Joshua whispered, "That's her, Dad." "That's Mira." Ethan instinctively positioned himself slightly in front of his son. "Yes, this was Harold's house," he confirmed cautiously. "May I ask who you are and what your business is here?" The woman extended her hand. "I'm Mira Choi. I suppose I was Harold's girlfriend?" Her smile faltered slightly. "Ex-girlfriend now, obviously." Ethan didn't take her hand. "You were at the courthouse earlier." Mira withdrew her hand, her composure never wavering. "Yes, I attended the sentencing. I've been trying to contact Harold for months, but he never answered my calls. I only found out what happened a few days ago when I saw the news." "Joshua knows who you are," Ethan said bluntly. "He says he saw you with Harold before." A flicker of confusion crossed Mira's face. "That's impossible. I never—" She trailed off as Claire approached, having noticed the confrontation from across the street. "Is everything all right?" Claire asked, her gaze moving between Ethan, Joshua, and the stranger. "This is Mira," Ethan explained. "Apparently, she was Harold's girlfriend." Claire's eyes widened. Harold had a girlfriend? Mira smiled politely. "We met online about a year ago. We were in a long-distance relationship. I live in Milwaukee. I'm just here to check on the house. I had no idea about any of this until recently." Joshua suddenly spoke up, his voice trembling with emotion. "You're lying. I saw you with him in the bunker." Mira's expression shifted from polite confusion to genuine surprise. I did visit the bunker once, about a month ago. Harold showed it to me when I came to visit, but I never saw a child down there. If I had, I would have called the police immediately." Claire stepped closer to Joshua, placing a protective hand on his shoulder. "Joshua, did you ever call out to her for help?" Joshua shook his head. I trusted Harold. He told me he was my father." His voice dropped to a whisper. "He locked me in a room and said it was to keep me safe from the enemy. But I saw her through the small window in the door. Harold took her to another room, and I heard strange noises. I thought he was punishing the enemy. He kept saying her name, Mira." Mira's cheeks flushed with embarrassment. "Oh, yes, Harold took me to a separate room in the bunker. We did what adults do." She cleared her throat awkwardly. "I thought the bunker was fascinating, like something from a Cold War movie. But I swear I had no idea he was keeping a child down there." Ethan studied her face, trying to determine if she was telling the truth. Her embarrassment seemed genuine, but something about her story still didn't sit right with him. "It's not your fault if you didn't know," Claire said finally, her voice gentle but cautious. "Harold was very secretive. Even we had no idea what was happening right across the street from us." Mira's expression softened with relief. "I can't imagine what you've all been through. When I heard the news, I was absolutely horrified. I came here partly to see the house, but also to express my condolences to your family. If I had noticed anything suspicious that day, anything at all." "Would you like to come inside our house?" Claire asked suddenly. "We could talk more comfortably there." Ethan shot his wife a surprised look, but she met his gaze with a meaningful one of her own. He recognized the silent message. Better to keep this woman close until they understood her connection to Harold more clearly. "That's very kind," Mira said with a grateful smile. Ethan checked his watch. "We should get going soon, Claire. Joshua has therapy in half an hour." "Of course," Claire nodded. "But we have time for a quick cup of tea, at least." As they crossed the street toward their house, Ethan noticed the unease that had taken hold of his son, and he was determined to set this straight. Once inside their home, Ethan guided Joshua upstairs to change clothes for his therapy appointment. The boy's room was half-packed, with labeled boxes stacked neatly against one wall and his essential items laid out on the bed for the morning move. "Dad," Joshua said as soon as the bedroom door closed behind them. "She's lying. She saw me in the bunker. She looked right at me through the door window." Ethan sat on the edge of the bed, gesturing for Joshua to join him. "I want to believe you, son," he said firmly, placing a reassuring hand on his son's knee. "But we need to consider all possibilities. Harold might have told her you were his son. Maybe she thought you were just playing down there or something." Joshua frowned, considering this. "She didn't seem surprised to see me, though. She just looked at me and then followed Harold into the other room." "Did she ever say anything threatening to you, or show any sign that she wanted to hurt you?" Joshua shook his head. "She just came that one time. They went into the room, and later I heard them leave together. I never saw her again until today." Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Without concrete evidence, there's not much we can report to the police about her. She could be another victim in all this, manipulated by Harold just like you were." He helped Joshua change into fresh clothes, observing the boy's movements with quiet concern. Although Joshua had physically recovered from his years of captivity, psychological scars remained evident in his cautious demeanor and persistent hypervigilance. "Ready to head downstairs?" Ethan asked, straightening Joshua's collar. The boy nodded, and they made their way back to the first floor. In the living room, Claire and Mira sat on opposite ends of the sofa, deep in conversation over steaming mugs of tea. "Always had such rigid schedules," Mira was saying. "Our video calls were strictly at 8 o'clock every Wednesday and Sunday evening. He would never allow me to text or call outside those times. I thought it was because of his work schedule, but now I wonder." Claire nodded sympathetically. Harold created elaborate systems to maintain control. The fictional war, the strict rules, it was all part of his psychological manipulation. Ethan cleared his throat gently from the doorway. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but we need to get going to make Joshua's appointment on time." "Of course," Claire said, setting down her mug. She turned to Mira. "Thank you for being so open with us. It helps us understand the full picture of what happened." Mira stood, smoothing her designer slacks. "Thank you for the tea and conversation. I know this has been an unimaginably difficult time for your family." After exchanging polite goodbyes, Ethan and Joshua headed out to the car. As they pulled away from the house, Ethan noticed Mira watching them from the front porch, her expression inscrutable. "What do you think of her story?" Joshua asked quietly as they drove. Ethan chose his words carefully. "I think there are still a lot of questions to be answered, but right now, let's focus on your therapy session. That's the most important thing today." As they approached the commercial district where Northwoods Kennels was located, Ethan remembered Roderick's offer about the moving service. As they passed the kennel, he noticed two muscular men loading a German Shepherd into a black SUV, the dog remarkably similar to the one Harold had purchased. Could that be the same dog? Ethan wondered aloud, remembering that police had returned the animal to the breeder after completing their investigation. Joshua followed his gaze, his body tensing visibly at the sight of the German Shepherd. "I don't want to look at it," he said, turning away. Ethan silently cursed himself for drawing attention to the dog. "I'm sorry, buddy. You're right. Let's not think about that anymore." He reached for his phone and dialed Lakeview Movers, quickly explaining that he needed to cancel their services for the following day. The representative informed him that he would lose the 25% deposit, but confirmed the cancellation. "I need to stop by Roderick's office to confirm our moving arrangements for tomorrow," Ethan told Joshua as they neared the therapy clinic. "I'll make it quick and be back before your session ends. But if I'm running a little late, just wait inside the building, okay? It's a safe place." Joshua nodded solemnly. "I can be brave." The simple statement, delivered with such earnest determination, made Ethan's heart ache. No 13-year-old should have to consciously remind themselves to be brave during a routine therapy appointment. After dropping Joshua off at the clinic and confirming with the receptionist that he would keep an eye on him, Ethan drove back to Northwoods Kennels. The SUV with the German Shepherd was gone when he arrived, and as he entered the facility, he was struck by how empty it seemed. Only a handful of smaller dogs remained in the previously bustling kennels. Roderick emerged from his office, wiping his hands on a towel. "Ethan, good to see you. I take it you're here about my offer?" "Yes," Ethan confirmed. "I've just canceled with Lakeview Movers." Roderick smiled broadly. "Excellent decision. You won't regret it." He gestured around the nearly empty facility. "As you can see, I've already started downsizing the breeding operation. After the police investigation and everything that happened with Harold, I've been reevaluating my business priorities." Dog breeding in this small town just isn't as profitable as it once was. "I notice there aren't many dogs left," Ethan commented. "I've moved most of them to a new location. I'm planning to convert this building into a logistics and warehouse facility, focusing more on the moving business." Ethan nodded, absently scanning the few remaining kennels. "I saw 2 men leaving with a German Shepherd earlier. Was that the same dog that Harold purchased?" Roderick shook his head. No. Harold's dog has been relocated. Those men were clients who board their dog here occasionally when they travel. They just picked him up today after a 2-week stay." Changing the subject, Roderick steered Ethan toward his office. "Now, about tomorrow's move. Have you considered my offer? I'm happy to handle everything free of charge. My way of helping your family after everything you've been through." "That's very generous," Ethan said, "but I'd like to pay you something." "It doesn't seem right to accept such a significant service completely free." Roderick waved dismissively. "Please, I insist. Consider it my contribution to your fresh start. You've been through enough, financially, emotionally, in every way possible." He pulled out a folder containing paperwork for Ethan to read and sign. As Ethan began reviewing the documents, Roderick's phone rang. "Excuse me," he said, stepping outside to take the call. Through the office window, Ethan could see Roderick speaking animatedly into his phone. Though he couldn't hear the conversation, the breeder's body language conveyed clear agitation. He paced back and forth, repeatedly running a hand through his hair and gesturing sharply with his free arm. When Roderick noticed Ethan watching, he quickly composed himself and ended the call, returning to the office with an apologetic smile. "Sorry about that," he said smoothly. "A customer complaining about finding fleas on their dog after boarding here. Ridiculous accusation. We maintain impeccable hygiene standards." He glanced at the paperwork. "All signed?" "Excellent. We'll be at your house at 8 tomorrow morning." Ethan stood, extending his hand. "Thank you again for your help. I should get back to pick up Joshua from his therapy session." As he drove away from Northwood's kennels, Ethan couldn't shake a growing sense of unease. Roderick's explanation about the phone call had seemed plausible enough, but his reaction had been disproportionately intense for a simple customer complaint, and the way he'd avoided discussing Harold's dog in detail. Ethan pushed the thoughts aside, attributing his suspicions to hypervigilance, a protective instinct that had been on high alert since Joshua's rescue. Right now, his priority was picking up his son and focusing on their family's fresh start. When Ethan arrived at the therapy clinic, he was surprised to find the waiting room empty. The receptionist looked up from his computer with a puzzled expression when Ethan asked about Joshua. "He finished his session about 10 minutes ago," the young man explained. "He waited here for a few minutes, and then I assumed he saw your car because he walked out quite confidently." A cold wave of panic washed over Ethan. "I just got here. My car wasn't outside." The receptionist's expression shifted from confusion to concern. "I'm so sorry. I didn't think to double-check. He just seemed so certain when he left." "Which way did he go?" Ethan demanded, already backing toward the door. "I'm not sure. He just went out the front door." Ethan rushed outside, frantically scanning the parking lot and adjacent businesses. "Joshua!" he called, his voice cracking with fear. "Joshua!" He sprinted to the convenience store next door, frantically asking the cashier if they'd seen a 13-year-old boy with reddish hair. The clerk shook his head apologetically, and Ethan moved on to the next business, and the next, each negative response increasing his desperation. Back in his car, Ethan circled the block, driving slowly while scanning every alley and doorway. If Joshua had left with someone, they couldn't have gotten far in just 10 minutes. His fingers fumbled with his phone, prepared to call Detective Martinez, when the device rang in his hand, the detective's name flashing on the screen. "Detective," Ethan answered immediately. "Joshua is missing from his therapy appointment. I think someone—" "Mr. Coulter," Detective Martinez interrupted, her voice grave. I need you to come home immediately. There's been an incident involving your wife. Ethan's blood turned to ice. What? What happened to Claire? And my son is missing. We'll discuss it when you get here. I will have officers searching the area around the clinic for Joshua, but you need to get back to your house now. Ethan's mind reeled, torn between continuing his search for Joshua and rushing home to Claire. I can't just abandon my search for... Mr. Coulter, Detective Martinez cut in firmly. We will have officers all over the area looking for your son. Right now, your wife needs you. The drive home was a blur, Ethan's hands shaking on the steering wheel as worst-case scenarios cascaded through his mind. When he turned onto his street, the flashing lights of police cars and an ambulance confirmed his fears. He barely remembered parking or exiting his vehicle, only the sight of paramedics wheeling Claire on a stretcher toward the ambulance, her face ghostly pale. "Claire!" he shouted, rushing to her side. Blood matted her blonde hair, and a pressure bandage on her abdomen was already soaked crimson. Despite her semi-conscious state, her eyes flickered open at the sound of his voice. A paramedic intercepted him. "Sir, your wife has been shot in the abdomen and sustained blunt force trauma to the head. She has multiple bleeding sites, and we need to transport her immediately." Claire's hand weakly reached for Ethan's. "Find him," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "They wanted to take our son." Her eyes closed again as the paramedics continued their urgent work. "They?" Ethan repeated, confusion mixing with horror. "Who's they?" The paramedic gently but firmly moved him aside. "Sir, we need to get her to the hospital now. Her condition is critical." As they loaded Claire into the ambulance, Ethan stood frozen, torn between going with his wife and searching for his son. Claire seemed to sense his dilemma. With what appeared to be the last of her strength, she shook her head and whispered again, "Find him." Detective Martinez approached as the ambulance doors closed. "Mr. Coulter, I know this is overwhelming, but I need you to focus. Did your wife mention anyone named Mira to you?" Ethan's head snapped up. "Mira was at our house earlier today. She claimed to be Harold's girlfriend." His eyes widened with sudden realization. "You think she took Joshua?" "Your wife managed to tell us that after Mira left, 2 men entered your home," the detective explained. "She was too weak to provide details, but we're working on the assumption that these incidents are connected." Ethan ran a hand through his hair, struggling to process this new information. "I didn't see any men. The only person I saw at the breeder was Roderick and—" He trailed off, remembering the 2 muscular men loading the German Shepherd into their SUV. "What is it?" Detective Martinez prompted. "There were 2 men at Northwood's Kennels earlier, picking up a German Shepherd. Roderick said they were clients who boarded their dog there." The detective made a note on her pad. "We'll follow up on that. In the meantime, we've already sent officers to check Harold's bunker again, but they found no sign of recent activity, no new fingerprints or disturbances." What would these people want with Joshua? "And why attack Claire?" Ethan asked, desperation creeping into his voice. "It could be revenge," Detective Martinez suggested grimly. "Or perhaps they're trying to dismantle your family piece by piece. We're exploring all possibilities." Another officer stepped forward, holding an evidence bag with what looked like animal fur. "We found these hairs on the living room carpet," he said. "They appear to be from a dog, but we'll need to confirm." Ethan's earlier suspicion crystallized into certainty. "Those men I saw at the breeder, they must be involved in this. They had a German Shepherd that looked identical to the one Harold bought." As they were still trying to wrap their heads around the chain of events, Detective Martinez's radio crackled to life with an incoming message. She listened intently, her expression growing even more grave. "The woman, Mira, just turned herself in at the station. She's armed and demanding to be placed in the same cell as Harold." Ethan stared at the detective in disbelief. "What? But why would she do that after—" "I need to talk to her. She knows where Joshua is." "My officers will handle the interrogation," Detective Martinez began, but Ethan cut her off. "You don't understand. I lost my son for 8 years while police conducted their investigation. In the end, I was the one who found him. I won't stand by and wait again." Detective Martinez studied him for a moment before nodding reluctantly. "All right, you can come to the station, but you'll observe the questioning, not participate. Is that clear?" "Crystal," Ethan agreed, already heading toward his car. If Mira knew anything about Joshua's whereabouts, he would make sure she revealed it, one way or another. The Maple Hollow police station hummed with unusual activity as officers coordinated their response to what was now a kidnapping and attempted murder investigation. Detective Martinez had immediately mobilized roadblocks at all major exits from town and alerted neighboring communities to be on lookout for Joshua or the suspicious men with the German Shepherd. As Ethan followed the detective through the station, he caught sight of Mira being processed at the booking desk. Her composed demeanor from earlier had completely vanished, replaced by a wild, almost manic energy that made her seem like an entirely different person. Unable to contain himself, Ethan broke away from Detective Martinez and approached the booking area. "Where is he?" he demanded, his voice raw with emotion. "Where's my son?" Mira looked up, a disturbing smile spreading across her face. "By now the dog would have gotten to him," she said, her voice eerily calm. "Roderick kept it hungry enough for proper revenge, but I was better than him." The mention of the dog sent a bolt of terror through Ethan. Before he could lunge across the desk, an officer intervened, pulling him back. "That's enough," the officer warned Mira. "Save it for the interrogation room." Detective Martinez ushered Ethan away as 2 officers escorted Mira toward an interrogation room. "I understand your anger," she said firmly, "but antagonizing her won't help us find Joshua faster." "I can't just sit here while they interrogate her," Ethan said, pacing the narrow corridor. "Every second matters. What if the dog is actually with Joshua right now? We haven't heard a word from the officers you sent to look for him." Detective Martinez placed a steadying hand on his shoulder. "My officers are trained for situations like this. We'll relay the new information to the team in the field, and the interrogation unit will get what we need from her." But Ethan couldn't accept that. The memory of 8 years of helpless waiting while police investigations went nowhere was too fresh, too painful. "I'm sorry," he said, backing toward the exit. "I can't do this again. I'll be out there looking for my son." "Mr. Coulter," Detective Martinez called after him, but Ethan was already running toward the parking lot. In his car, Ethan tried to think logically despite his mounting panic. Where would kidnappers take a child if they wanted to harm him? Not somewhere public where they might be seen. Somewhere isolated, but still accessible by car. He decided to start by retracing his route to the therapy clinic, searching the surrounding area more thoroughly. As he drove, he scanned every alley, every abandoned lot, every secluded spot where someone might temporarily hide a child. Finding nothing, Ethan expanded his search outward, driving in expanding circles through Maple Hollow. He passed by factories, strip malls, and residential neighborhoods, all the while fighting against the tightening knot of dread in his stomach. The eastern outskirts of town, where Maple Hollow gave way to dense forest and scattered farms, seemed a likely area for someone seeking isolation. Ethan turned onto a rural road that followed the winding path of the Blackwater River. The area was sparsely populated, with ramshackle hunting cabins and the occasional homestead breaking up the otherwise uninterrupted wilderness. As he rounded a bend, Ethan spotted 2 figures on the side of the road, an elderly woman and a young boy, waving their arms frantically. He slammed on the brakes, hope surging through him until he realized the child was much younger than Joshua, perhaps 7 or 8. Ethan pulled over, and the woman rushed toward his car, pure terror etched across her weathered face. "Please, please help us," she cried, her voice thin and reedy with fear. "There's a dog, a vicious dog chasing us." Ethan looked past her and saw it, a German shepherd running full tilt down the road toward them, no leash or handler in sight. The animal's mouth was open, revealing sharp and red teeth, its powerful body moving with predatory purpose. Without hesitation, Ethan flung open his passenger door. "Get in! Quick!" The woman and child scrambled into his car, and Ethan locked the doors just as the dog reached them, leaping at the passenger window with a savage bark. The animal circled the vehicle, snapping at the tires and windows before it ran back toward the riverside. "Thank God you stopped," the woman gasped, clutching the boy protectively. Her clothes were ragged, her appearance suggesting someone living on the margins of society. "We saw it attack a child down by the river. When it spotted us, it started chasing us, too." Ethan's heart nearly stopped. "A child? Where? Was he okay?" "Down by the old bridge tunnel," the woman said, pointing through the windshield toward a concrete structure spanning the river about a quarter-mile ahead. "The poor boy was screaming something awful. We were too far away to help him." Ethan immediately reached for his phone, dialing Detective Martinez. When she answered, he spoke urgently. "I think I've found Joshua. He's by the old river bridge on East County Road 7, and there's a German shepherd attacking him. I have 2 witnesses who saw it. Please send ambulances and animal control immediately." "Stay where you are," the detective ordered. "Units are on their way. If that dog is as dangerous as Mira implied, it's not safe for you to approach." "The dog is on Briar Ridge Road. It was chasing the 2 witnesses I found. I can't just stand around," Ethan exclaimed, even though he knew she was right. Going in without backup would be suicidal. "The nearest patrol car is 4 minutes out," Detective Martinez assured him. "I've already dispatched them with your location. Just hold your position." Ethan ended the call, turning to the homeless woman and child. "Did you see anyone else? Any men near the child?" The woman shook her head. "Just the boy and the dog, but we were pretty far away, and then we were running for our lives." The sound of sirens grew closer, and within minutes, 2 police cruisers raced past Ethan's car toward the bridge. He instructed the woman and child to stay put, then followed behind the police vehicles at a safe distance. At the bridge, officers were already deploying with tactical caution, weapons drawn as they scanned the area for both the dog and potential human threats. One officer approached Ethan's car as he pulled up. "Stay back, sir," the officer warned. "We're still securing the scene." Through the windshield, Ethan could see another officer following what appeared to be paw prints in the mud leading into a large drainage tunnel beneath the bridge. His every instinct screamed to run after them, to find his son, but he forced himself to wait, knowing he would only complicate their efforts. Long minutes passed, each second an eternity of helpless waiting. Then the radio on the officer's shoulder crackled to life. "We've located the boy, requesting immediate medical assistance. The dog is in the tunnel, cornered but still aggressive. It released the boy, but he was heavily injured." When Ethan spotted the animal control team approaching, he didn't wait for clearance. He leapt from his car and sprinted toward the tunnel entrance by the river. An officer shouted after him, but didn't give chase, turning his attention instead to coordinating with the arriving ambulance. Inside the tunnel, the air was damp and cold, the shallow water at the bottom soaking through Ethan's shoes. The tunnel curved slightly, and as he rounded the bend, he saw a cluster of officers at the far end, struggling to subdue the dog near the concrete wall where the old tunnel came to a dead end. Between the officers, huddled against the wall, was Joshua. Even from a distance, Ethan could see the blood soaking his son's clothing, the unnatural way he held his arm, the pallor of his skin. "Joshua!" he called, his voice echoing off the tunnel walls. One of the officers turned, motioning for Ethan to stay back. The German shepherd was being held at bay in a side channel of the tunnel, its growls reverberating ominously through the confined space. Ethan approached cautiously, his focus entirely on his son. Joshua's eyes were open but glazed with pain, his breathing shallow and rapid. "Dad?" the boy whispered as Ethan knelt beside him. "I'm here, buddy," Ethan said, fighting to keep his voice steady. "Help is coming. Just hold on." Joshua's clothing was torn in multiple places, revealing deep puncture wounds on his arms, legs, and torso where the dog had bitten him and torn into his flesh. His face had a long scratch across the cheek, narrowly missing his eye by inches. "It hurts?" "So much," Joshua whimpered, tears mixing with the blood on his face. I know," Ethan soothed, carefully taking his son's uninjured hand. "But you're going to be okay. The doctors will fix you up." The paramedics arrived moments later, gently moving Ethan aside to attend to Joshua. They worked efficiently, stabilizing his injuries and preparing him for transport. Meanwhile, animal control officers had secured the dog in a reinforced transport cage. As the medical team carefully moved Joshua onto a stretcher, Detective Martinez approached Ethan. "We found blood that doesn't match Joshua's," she reported. "It seems the dog may have attacked someone else as well, possibly one of the kidnappers." "Good," Ethan said grimly. "I hope it ripped them apart." The detective didn't reprimand him for the comment. "We're following the blood trail. Initial indications suggest 2 men were here. One got bitten worse than the other." Outside the tunnel, Ethan spotted the homeless woman and child speaking with another officer. He approached them as the paramedics loaded Joshua into the ambulance. "Thank you," he said earnestly. "If you hadn't seen what happened and flagged me down—" The woman shrugged uncomfortably. "We didn't do nothing special, just trying to save our own skins, really." "You were in the right place at the right time," Ethan insisted. "You helped me find my son before it was too late. I want to properly thank you later, when this is all over." "That's not necessary," the woman said, but Ethan could see a flicker of hope in her tired eyes at the prospect of assistance. Before he could respond, a commotion erupted nearby. 2 officers were escorting a handcuffed man toward a patrol car, while a second man was being helped by paramedics, his arm and leg heavily bandaged where the dog had apparently bitten him. The injured man glared at his less wounded companion. "You coward," he snarled. "Hiding behind me and letting me take all the bites?" The other man spat on the ground. "Shut up, Carlos. It's not my fault you're slower than me." Ethan stared at the men with pure hatred, recognizing them as the same pair he'd seen at Northwood's Kennels earlier. It took every ounce of his self-control not to lunge at them, to demand answers about why they'd targeted his family. A paramedic approached, interrupting his dark thoughts. "Sir, we need to transport your son immediately. Do you want to ride with him?" Ethan nodded, turning away from the arrested men. Justice would come for them soon enough. Right now, Joshua needed him more. The ambulance raced through Maple Hollow, sirens wailing as it cut through the afternoon traffic. In the cramped confines of the vehicle, Ethan held Joshua's uninjured hand while paramedics worked to stabilize him, attaching IV fluids and monitoring his vital signs. "You're doing great, buddy," Ethan encouraged, even as fear threatened to overwhelm him. The wounds were deep and numerous, some still bleeding despite the pressure bandages. "The dog," Joshua whispered, his voice faint. "Mira and they just let it go. They said it was hungry." Ethan squeezed his son's hand gently. "Try not to talk now. Save your strength." "They said—" "Roderick sent them," Joshua continued, each word a struggle. "Said they worked for him, but Mira was better with money and ideas." One of the paramedics glanced at Ethan. "His blood pressure's dropping. We need to keep him calm and still." Ethan nodded, leaning closer to Joshua. "Everything's going to be okay. The police caught the men who did this. Just rest now." When they arrived at Maple Hollow Memorial Hospital, a trauma team was waiting at the emergency entrance. Joshua was whisked away immediately, leaving Ethan standing in the chaotic ER lobby, his son's blood still staining his clothes. A nurse guided him to a waiting area, assuring him that Joshua was in good hands. "The doctor will come speak with you as soon as they've assessed his injuries," she promised. Ethan inquired about Claire, learning that she was in surgery. The bullet had damaged her liver, requiring immediate surgical intervention, but the doctors were cautiously optimistic about her prognosis. Time passed in an excruciating blur. Ethan alternated between pacing the waiting room and sitting with his head in his hands, replaying the day's events and wondering how everything had gone so catastrophically wrong. The sentencing that morning, what should have been closure, now seemed like a cruel joke. Finally, a doctor in scrubs approached. "Mr. Coulter? I'm Dr. Patel. I've been treating your son." Ethan stood immediately. "How is he?" Dr. Patel's expression was serious but measured. "Joshua has multiple dog bites, some quite severe. The most concerning are on his abdomen and thigh, where the animal's teeth penetrated deeply. We've cleaned the wounds thoroughly and started him on a strong course of antibiotics to prevent infection. He'll also need treatment for tetanus and rabies as a precaution." Will he be okay?" Ethan asked, dreading the answer. "The wounds will heal, though some will require plastic surgery due to the tissue damage," Dr. Patel explained. "There's no injury to major arteries or organs, which is fortunate. However, the psychological trauma of the attack, especially given his history, is something we'll need to address." Ethan nodded, relief washing over him despite the gravity of the situation. Joshua was alive. After everything they'd been through, that simple fact felt like a miracle. "Can I see him?" "He's sedated now while we continue to treat his wounds, but yes, you can see him briefly. And I understand your wife is here as well?" "Yes," Ethan confirmed. "She was shot during the same incident." Dr. Patel's expression softened with sympathy. "I'll have a nurse check on her status for you. This way, please." Joshua lay pale and still on the hospital bed, his exposed skin a patchwork of bandages and antiseptic marks. An IV delivered fluids and medications, and a heart monitor beeped steadily beside him. Despite the damage inflicted by the dog, the steady rise and fall of his chest reassured Ethan that his son was, indeed, still fighting. After spending a few minutes with Joshua, a nurse informed Ethan that Claire was out of surgery and stabilized in recovery. She guided him to another floor where he found his wife awake, though groggy from anesthesia and pain medication. "Ethan," Claire whispered as he entered the room. Her voice was weak, but her eyes searched his face anxiously. "Joshua?" "He's here in the hospital," Ethan assured her, taking her hand. "He was attacked by a dog, but the doctors say he'll recover." Relief softened Claire's features. Thank God. She closed her eyes briefly, then opened them with renewed focus. Those men, they came right after Mira left. "What happened?" Ethan asked gently, aware that she needed to rest, but equally aware that her account might contain crucial information. Claire swallowed painfully. "After you left with Joshua, I was preparing dinner when two men knocked on the door. I saw a German Shepherd in their car when I answered. They tried to force me into the vehicle, but I refused. I had already dialed 911 on my phone in my pocket, so the call was connected when one of them drew a gun." Ethan's grip on her hand tightened. "Claire, I'm so sorry. I should have been there." She shook her head weakly. "Number. If you had been home, Joshua would have been there too." She took a shuddering breath. "They were angry when I resisted. The one with the gun shot me, and the other hit me with your baseball bat from the hall closet. They were panicking, arguing with each other. I heard one say something about that woman promised to pay us more than Roderick, but now we're screwed. Then they mentioned helping Mira finish the business and not going back to Roderick, or they'd be dead for betraying him." A knock at the door interrupted their conversation. Detective Martinez entered, her expression grave but professional. "Mr. and Mrs. Coulter, I hope I'm not intruding. I wanted to update you on the investigation." Ethan gestured for her to continue, not releasing Claire's hand. "We've arrested Roderick Thompson at Northwood's Kennels," the detective reported. "He was preparing to flee when officers arrived. During questioning, he admitted that the two men who attacked your wife were supposed to work for him. Apparently, they had a plan set for tomorrow during your move, but they betrayed him by working with Mira instead." "What was he planning to do to us?" Ethan asked, though he feared he already knew the answer. Detective Martinez's expression hardened. "He hasn't revealed the specifics yet, only that he owed Harold the revenge he deserved. When we mentioned Mira, he became extremely agitated, claiming she ruined his relationship with Harold." Claire looked bewildered. "I don't understand. Two people were plotting revenge for Harold? How is that possible? Everyone described him as a complete loner." "It seems Harold had a more complicated personal life than anyone realized," Detective Martinez said. "Roderick and Mira apparently had no knowledge of each other until recently. Both had romantic relationships with Harold that he kept entirely separate." Ethan shook his head in disbelief. "All this time, we thought Harold acted alone. He had accomplices all along?" "Not accomplices in the kidnapping," the detective clarified. "From what we've gathered so far, neither Roderick nor Mira knew about Joshua being held captive until it became public. Their revenge plans were conceived after Harold's arrest." "How did Roderick know about the bunker?" Ethan asked. "He claims Harold showed it to him years ago, but he never saw Joshua there. He stayed silent during the trial to avoid implicating himself, all while planning his revenge. He was deeply loyal to Harold." Claire's hand tightened around Ethan's. "What about Mira? Has she told you anything?" Detective Martinez's expression darkened. "I'm afraid Mira Choi is dead. During processing at the station, after one of our officers told her she wouldn't be going to the same prison as Harold, she managed to seize an officer's service weapon. Before anyone could react, she shot herself in the head. We believe her motive was driven solely by her twisted relationship with Harold." The news landed like a physical blow. Despite everything, Ethan hadn't wished death on the woman, only answers and justice. "And the men?" he asked after a moment of stunned silence. "Carlos Reyes is being treated here for his dog bites under police guard. His partner, Michael Torres, is in custody at the station. Both are cooperating, trying to minimize their charges by implicating each other and their employers." From their statements, it seems they were caught between Roderick and Mira, trying to maximize their payment by playing both sides. They used the dog that Roderick had been planning to use during tomorrow's move. Ethan's mind reeled at the web of deception and betrayal. So tomorrow, during the move, Roderick planned to kill all three of you, Detective Martinez confirmed grimly. The free-moving service was a trap. The realization that they had nearly walked into a deadly ambush sent a chill through Ethan. Only Mira's earlier intervention, however malicious her own intentions, had disrupted Roderick's careful planning. "I don't understand," Claire said, her voice faltering with exhaustion. "Why would they risk so much to avenge a man who's already been sentenced to 25 years? Detective Martinez sighed. "Love and obsession make people do incomprehensible things. Both Roderick and Mira seemed to believe they were fulfilling Harold's wishes, that he would somehow know and appreciate their actions." Claire's eyes began to close, the medication and her body's need for healing overtaking her desire to understand. Detective Martinez noticed immediately. "We can continue this conversation later," she said gently. "You both need rest. We'll have officers stationed outside both your room and Joshua's for security, though we believe all involved parties have been apprehended." As the detective left, Ethan remained by Claire's bedside, watching as she drifted into sleep. The day that had begun with such promise, with justice finally served and plans for a fresh start, had descended into a nightmare worse than anything he could have imagined. And yet, incredibly, they had survived, wounded, traumatized anew, but alive. Tomorrow's move would have to wait, but they would still have their future together, a future that had nearly been stolen from them once again. Dawn broke over Maple Hollow, casting long shadows through the hospital windows. Ethan had spent the night moving between Claire's room and Joshua's, unable to rest while both were injured and vulnerable. The doctors had advised him to go home, to get some sleep, but the thought of leaving either of them alone was unbearable. In Joshua's room, the morning nurse completed her checks of his vital signs and bandages. "The doctor will be in soon to examine him," she told Ethan. "He's stable, which is good news. The antibiotics are working, and there's no sign of infection in the wounds." Ethan nodded gratefully, studying his son's sleeping face. Even in repose, a slight furrow between Joshua's brows suggested his sleep was troubled by dark dreams. Dr. Patel arrived shortly after, reviewing Joshua's chart before examining his injuries. "We'll need to perform the first round of debridement and stitching today," he explained to Ethan. "The plastic surgery to minimize scarring will come later, once the initial healing has begun." "Will he be in much pain?" Ethan asked. "We'll keep him comfortable with medication," Dr. Patel assured him. "But yes, the recovery will be painful at times. These wounds are deep, and the tissue damage is extensive, particularly on his face and hands where he tried to defend himself." The thought of Joshua attempting to fight off the vicious animal sent a fresh wave of anguish through Ethan. His son had already endured so much trauma in his young life. How much more could a child bear before breaking completely? Dr. Patel seemed to read his thoughts. "Children are remarkably resilient," he said gently. "With proper support, medical, psychological, and familial, even the deepest wounds can heal." He was just starting to feel safe again, Ethan said, more to himself than the doctor. After 8 years of captivity, months of therapy, and now this. "The trauma is significant," Dr. Patel acknowledged. "But it's important to recognize that this experience, while terrible, is fundamentally different from his captivity. This time, he wasn't alone. You found him quickly, and he knows you were searching for him. That makes a difference in how children process traumatic events." Ethan absorbed this perspective, finding a measure of comfort in it. "Thank you, Doctor." After Dr. Patel left, Ethan returned to Claire's room. She was awake, looking stronger than she had the previous evening. A nurse was helping her sit up slightly, adjusting her pillows for comfort. "How's Joshua?" Claire asked immediately upon seeing him. Ethan sat beside her, taking her hand. "Stable. They're going to clean and stitch his wounds today. The doctor says he's doing as well as can be expected." Claire closed her eyes briefly, relief evident in her expression. "I've been so worried. When those men came—" She trailed off, the memory clearly painful. "Detective Martinez was here earlier," she continued after a moment. "She said they recovered security footage from the therapy clinic. It shows Mira approaching Joshua outside the building and leading him to a car." "He went willingly?" Ethan asked, surprised. Claire nodded. "The detective said it appeared that way on the footage. She thinks Mira may have convinced him somehow." The thought that Joshua had been tricked rather than forcibly abducted was somehow an additional cruelty. His son's trust, so cautiously extended after years of deception, had been weaponized against him once again. The conversation was interrupted when a nurse entered to check Claire's vital signs. Noticing her patient's fatigue, she gave Ethan a pointed look. "Mrs. Coulter needs her rest," she said firmly. Ethan nodded in understanding. He quietly made his way to Joshua's room, finding his son awake but groggy from the pain medication. "Hey, buddy," Ethan said softly, taking a seat beside the bed. "How are you feeling?" Joshua's eyes, dull with medication but still alert enough to recognize his father, focused on Ethan's face. "It hurts," he admitted. "I know," Ethan said, carefully taking his son's unbandaged hand. "The doctors are giving you medicine to help with that, and they're going to fix you up today. clean the wounds, and put in some stitches. Joshua nodded slightly, then asked, "Mom?" "Mom's doing okay," Ethan assured him. "She's resting in another room. She got hurt too, but the doctors say she's going to be fine." Joshua's eyes filled with tears. "I shouldn't have gone with that lady. I was too curious, and I thought I could be brave. I should have known better." Ethan's heart clenched painfully. "This is not your fault, Joshua, not one bit. That woman tricked you, and those men, they were bad people who wanted to hurt our family. But they're all caught now. They can't hurt us anymore." "I thought he was safe in prison," Joshua whispered. "Harold? I thought he couldn't reach us anymore." The simple statement, delivered with such confusion and hurt, perfectly encapsulated the terrible irony of their situation. Harold himself was indeed safely contained, but the toxic influence of his manipulation had spread like poison, affecting people they hadn't even known existed. "He can't reach us," Ethan confirmed. "What happened yesterday wasn't Harold's doing. It was people who thought they were acting on his behalf, without his knowledge. And now they're all caught too." Joshua seemed to consider this, his young mind struggling to process the complex web of human motivations that had led to his suffering. Finally, he asked, "Can we still move away? To the new house?" "Yes," Ethan promised. "As soon as you and Mom are well enough to travel. We'll still have our fresh start, just a little later than planned." Joshua nodded, his eyelids growing heavy as the medication pulled him back toward sleep. "I want to go far away," he murmured, "where no one knows about Harold or the bunker or any of it." "We will," Ethan whispered, watching as his son drifted into sleep. "We'll go as far as we need to." He remained by Joshua's bedside, a silent guardian against the shadows that continued to pursue them, even as the winter sun climbed higher in the sky outside. The battle wasn't over, but at least now all their enemies were visible, named, and contained. That, Ethan decided, was progress of a sort, a hard-won step toward the healing they all desperately needed.